Walk us through, you said that you were able to at some point get the gun from her. Tell us, Heath, what is it that you remember after that?
She was screaming out of her mind, scared. It was like she had seen a demon or something. She was terrified. And my first thought was there was an intruder somewhere and she thought she was after somebody else.
And to be clear, CARLY never told you that she thought somebody else was in the house, right?
No, that's the feeling that I got. She was terrified out of her mind.
And at that time, you did not yet know that your wife was dead, right?
No, not at that time.
So CARLY's scared. She's screaming when she shoots at you. How many shots went off from that gun?
At that time, there was 3.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. For me, the most disturbing thing about the CARLY Gregg case is perhaps the stepfather's denial. Even with the video footage, and in spite of his stepdaughter murdering his wife, and despite her trying to murder him, you just heard it, firing 3 shots at him, he still defended his stepdaughter in court. Heath Smiley also seemed to blame the whole thing on an intruder. I mean, there was no evidence of an intruder. She said nothing about an intruder. He thought that she made an innocent mistake. She still fired 3 shots at him, and the reality is she told a friend of hers that she was saving, that there were 3 other shots for her stepfather. And so it was deliberate, and yet when he testifies, he seems to either not be aware of this or he's minimizing it. Anyway, he went on to say, "When I opened the door to the kitchen, the gun went off in my face before the door was even 3 to 4 inches wide open, and everything kind of went pretty fast from there." He said, "It was a blur." Now, look at the words that he uses. The gun went off. Okay, so she wasn't trying to deliberately shoot him. The gun just somehow went off like the gun in the Rust incident. Oh, okay. So you want to almost give the perpetrator the benefit that the gun just kind of spontaneously developed a life of its own, that the gun developed intentions of its own. Or did somebody text him, ask him when he was coming home, see that he was coming home, send her friend outside while he was sort of coming home, and then do exactly what she intended to do?
He did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Now, according to an article in People magazine, Heath said that after the first shot, he recalls a struggle to remove a .357 Magnum from Gregg's hand. So they're actually struggling over this. Heath said he received a gunshot wound to the shoulder. During the struggle, Heath said 2 more shots rang out. Are you telling me that during the struggle, you can't struggle with somebody without seeing who they are? Are you telling me that she still couldn't recognize who he was? Heath said he eventually was able to gain possession of the weapon. And you kind of hear him saying that he could see on her face that she looked extremely scared. Well, if he could have a look at her face, wasn't she looking at him? And so if she was looking at him, didn't she know who he was? And wasn't that look on her face basically the look of, well, I've just killed someone and I need to kill you now, otherwise I'm going to get into serious trouble? I think if someone is trying to kill you deliberately and directly, and you still want to make excuses for them, including at their own murder trial, I don't know if there's much hope for you in the real world. You just heard him testifying she was screaming out of her mind, scared. Do you think she really was scared? I mean, if you look at the video footage of her after the shots that were fired that killed Ashley Smiley, does she look scared? The way that she texts, does she look scared? Was Ashley screaming at her? Did she look scared, or did she make a decision to do what she did? Had she been thinking about doing what she did? And so it's almost incomprehensible that just after having this gun pointed at him and he's shot, and he sees who it is, he seems to be making excuses for it. He says, my first thought was there was an intruder somewhere. Well, guess what? There wasn't. And she thought she was after somebody else. Guess what? She wasn't. She was after you, Dumbo. Going back to the article, Heath's account of Ashley's deceased body matched the account of the first deputy who responded to the scene. Ashley was lying straight on her back in Gregg's room with a bloody towel draped over her face. And yet, in court, Heath insisted she's just a sweet little girl. On redirect, the prosecutor questioned Heath's notation that Gregg has always been a happy little girl, basically painting this sort of fairy tale picture, this sort of too good to be true. There's nothing to see here. This person's innocent and everything has been really, it's been a wonderful childhood kind of thing. And so can you say that about any person in the world that you've never ever seen them angry or mad? Can you say that about any human being that has ever existed? In any event, Newman says she's never been angry or mad, and Heath replies, never. Well, I don't know, in my mind, definitely a red flag pops up, because why are you defending this person in such an unrealistic way? Going back to the article, on Monday, prosecutor Catherine White Newman told jurors that over the course of the trial, CARLY, who was 14 years old at the time of the killing, would be exposed as a dangerous killer who had a secret life, including burner phones, hidden vape pens containing marijuana, and a history of cheating at school and other things. Now, some of you might look into this case and say, you know what, the denial that we're seeing here from the stepdad is revolting, it's strange, it's irrational, but I'm also seeing people making comments here saying, so what if she used marijuana? So what if she was on drugs? None of that really explains her behavior. So let me ask you a question. Do you think her being on drugs at 14 years of age mitigates the situation? In other words, it would actually make her a more innocent daughter and sort of someone who's honest and reliable and does what she's told and doesn't have a secret life? Or do you think someone who is on substances aggravates the situation and leads to secretive and also dishonest behavior? And you might say, you know what, taking drugs isn't really that bad. I think you need to ask the question, what if you're using drugs in an extreme manner? In other words, it's not a puff here and a puff there. It's a lot of drug use, and it's someone who's not just addicted, but really caught up in it. And in many different ways, it's not just marijuana, there are mushrooms, there's cocaine, there are vapes, all this sort of thing. And what it adds up to is this sort of secret life, but not a secret life that is kind of sweet and, like someone who's has a crush on someone else. It's a secret life that is sort of debauched and filled with dishonesty and filled with deceiving her parents. And you almost get the feeling that suddenly wanting to take drugs and insisting on being able to take drugs and to continue this secret life becomes more important than the lives of her own mother and stepfather. In other words, the most important thing to her in the world is being able to take drugs. And what does that tell you other than we are dealing with an addict, a drug addict, someone who's not using drugs a little bit, but they've completely taken over her life? And so you see her quest for a drug-fueled fairy tale became an escalating nightmare that eventually consumed and claimed her young mother's life. But also, clearly, having other enablers around her, people who made excuses for her, friends that hung around who didn't intervene, didn't raise the alarm. that is how things were allowed to escalate to the point they did. They say it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to prevent someone like this from becoming who they are. And if or while they are becoming who they are, nothing is done to interrupt that process, well, then that's what happens. They become who they are. And that is how things go from bad to diabolical. I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.